रेडी। देखो, जो मैंने अभी आपको 2023 का डिक्टेशन बोला 100 पे, 80 पे, और साथ में आपने टाइप किया, इसका कंटेंट, और 2024 का जो बोला बहुत आसान सा कंटेंट था। मैं इस तरह की प्रिपरेशंस नहीं करा रहा था, मैं आपको लेवल इससे ऊपर प्रिपरेशन करा रहा हूँ। जो मैं डिक्टेशन के कंटेंट बोल रहा हूँ उसका लेवल काफ़ी अच्छा है इन सब कंटेंट से। ये सिर्फ आपको इसलिए करा दिए गए ताकि आपको ये लगे कि एग्जाम में किस तरह कंटेंट आता है। लेकिन एग्जाम के नाम पे अपने आप को हाथ को शिवर करने की जरूरत नहीं है, अपने ऊपर प्रेशर लेने की जरूरत नहीं है। कंटेंट बहुत ही सिंपल कंटेंट आए हैं। एग्रीकल्चर पे इसलिए जोर दिया गया है, जो मैंने दो भी जितने भी कंटेंट बोले सब में एग्रीकल्चर का जिक्र आता है। एग्रीकल्चर का मतलब है कि उससे रिलेटेड कंटेंट का जिक्र आता है, फार्मर्स का जिक्र आता है, क्रॉप का जिक्र आता है, एग्री प्रोडक्शन का जिक्र आता है, मिल्क का या फिर जो भी। तो इसलिए एग्रीकल्चर वाले कंटेंट करने से क्या होता है, वो सारे वर्ड्स आप फेमिलियर हो जाते हो। और एग्रीकल्चर का जो कंटेंट मैंने आपको असाइनमेंट के रूप में दे रखा है उसका लेवल इन सब से ऊपर है। उसके अंदर डिक्टेशन लिखना बहुत बड़ी बात है। वो कंटेंट में मैंने काफ़ी सारा कंटेंट जो है, कुरुक्षेत्र एक मैगजीन आती है, काफ़ी अच्छी मैगजीन है, उससे कंटेंट मैंने उसको तैयार किया था। तो अगर आप उस कंटेंट को करते हो और साथ में जो मैं डिक्टेशन के जो सेट ले रहा था सुबह जो मैंने किए हैं, उन सेटों को आपने अच्छे से परफॉर्म कर रखा है, उनके अंदर एक्यूरेसी आपकी 87, 86, 89 आ रही है डी ग्रेड के अंदर वाले 80 वाली स्पीड पे। और सी वाले पे यानी कि डी जो 100 की स्पीड है उस पर आपकी 92 प्लस आ रही है। तो आप आराम से एग्जाम को कन्वर्ट कर ले जाएंगे, कोई बड़ा खेल नहीं है। बस पैनिक नहीं होना, सिचुएशंस नॉर्मल रहेगी। जो कंटेंट आपने देखा 23-24 का, जो 22 का बोलूँगा, जो भी सब आसान से कंटेंट आएंगे, टफ कंटेंट नहीं होता। लेकिन 2017 में अगर बात की जाए तो वहाँ पे ना कंटेंट प्रेजेंट की उससे आया था, तो इसलिए मैंने आपको कन्वोकेशंस और प्रेजेंट करने की सलाह दी है। वही कंटेंट आएगा, उसी तरह के वर्ड आएंगे, डिट्टो नहीं होता लेकिन पैटर्न्स वो होता है। आप उन वर्डों से अलग वर्ड एक या दो महसूस करते हो और वो आप कुछ ना कुछ बनाकर, जब आप डिफरेंट वर्ड को फेस करते हो तो उसको रीड बैक करना आसान हो जाता है। तो इसलिए तैयारी लिमिटेड तैयारी है, फोकस तैयारी है, पैटर्न पर तैयारी करना बहुत ज़्यादा। आपने आपको प्रेशर इस बात से मत लेना कि 4 दिन में रह गए, 7 दिन रह गए, कितने भी दिन रहे हो, आप रोज़ टाइप करते आए हो, डेली डिक्टेशन लिख रहे हो, डेली टाइप कर रहे हो। जो परफॉर्मेंस आपकी अगर यहाँ पे 87 प्लस चल रही है डी ग्रेड के हिसाब से, तो आप वहाँ पे क्वालिफाई कर लेंगे। मैं 87% एक्यूरेसी की सिर्फ इसीलिए बात कर पा रहा हूँ क्योंकि इस सॉफ्टवेयर के अंदर कोमा के साथ में फुल मिस्टेक काउंट की जा रही है। दूसरा, मैंने आपको कंटेंट कोमा के साथ टाइप करना की आदत डाली है और वहाँ पे आपको कोमा की मिस्टेक्स काउंट नहीं होगी, इसलिए मैं 87% की बात कर रहा हूँ। अगर आप किसी भी सॉफ्टवेयर को ऐसे सॉफ्टवेयर में टाइप करो जिसमें नो कोमा हो, तो ये 87 का क्राइटेरिया, 86 का क्राइटेरिया काम नहीं करेगा। उस टाइम पे 94, 93, 95 के आसपास क्राइटेरिया काम करेगा। फिर आप इस क्राइटेरिया को लेकर मानेंगे कि सर ने बोला था कि 92, 93 वो 87 आ जाएगा तो क्वालिफाई हो जाओगे। वो मैं इस सॉफ्टवेयर की बात करूँ जो आप फिलहाल कंटिन्यूटी से टाइप कर रहे हो। इसके अलावा आप घर पे कोई डिक्टेशन तैयार कर रहे हो, सपोज करो आपने तैयार की है, केसी का कोई भी तैयार किया, आप उसको कंटेंट के अंदर लिख के टाइप कर सकते हो। 100 पे चाहो 100 पे लिख लो, 80 पे चाहो 80 पे लिख लो। इसमें दोनों कंटेंट अवेलेबल है आपके पास में, विद कोमा नो कोमा, आप उसको रैंडमली टाइप कर सकते हो। टाइप करने के बाद एनालाइज करने का मैंने मैं आपको जो है इसके बारे में बता दिया था कि एनालाइज करना बहुत जरूरी है। एनालाइज करने के बाद में उस पर गलती पर काम करना बहुत जरूरी है। अब लिखेंगे, तो जो मैं सुबह बोल रहा हूँ थोड़ी डिक्टेशन जल्दी बोल देता हूँ ताकि आपको मैं ऑडियो पर लगा पाऊँ। मैं सुबह 8:30 बजे के आसपास, 9 के आसपास बोली थी। तो मैं मेरा इंटेंशन ये है कि मोस्टली बच्चे ऑडियो पे लिखें। अगर आपका अभी भी मन ऑडियो पे लिखने का है तो 15 मिनट के लिए आप चाहो तो बाहर बैठ सकते हो, मैं डिक्टेशन बोलूँगा, फिर उसको मैं दोबारा लगाऊंगा। क्योंकि अगर आप एक बार लिखने के बाद ऑडियो पे लिखेंगे ना, वो फैमिलियर हो जाती है कंटेंट, वो काफ़ी ज़्यादा है। हालांकि इसका कंटेंट है, अच्छा लेवल का कंटेंट है, आपकी चॉइस है, कंपल्सेशन नहीं है, मर्जी है। आप ऑडियो को यहाँ पे भी लिख सकते हो, घर पे भी लिख सकते हो। ऑडियो को ब्लूटूथ पे लगा के नहीं लिखेंगे आप कभी, अगर घर पे प्रैक्टिस कर रहे हो आप अपने फ़ोन का ही स्पीकर ऑन करके अपनी बुक्स का लेवल उस लेवल पे लागे, ताकि कान के आसपास के लेवल पे चला जाए, क्योंकि फ़ोन में आवाज़ कम होती है। या फिर कोई भी ब्लूटूथ का कोई टाइप का कोई स्पीकर अटैच करके लिखेंगे। डायरेक्ट कान में ब्लूटूथ लगा के प्रैक्टिस 5-7 दिन नहीं करेंगे, क्योंकि आपको ना जो डिवाइस होगी आपकी बाहर होगी, वो इनसाइडेड नहीं होगी। तो आवाज़ जो है उसी तरह से आनी चाहिए। ठीक है, उस स्पीकर को आप कहीं भी रख सकते हो, साइड में रख सकते हो, फ्रंट पे भी रख सकते हो, बैक साइड भी रख सकते हो। कोशिश करो कि फ्रंट पर रहे या लेफ्ट या राइट में रहे, उस तरफ डायरेक्शन से लिखेंगे। पहले 100 पे और फिर 80 पे। रेडी, स्टार्टेड। The base of IIT is to be expanded. Regional engineering colleges are to be strengthened and new institutes will be set up with public-private partnership. The role of the private sector will be encouraged. A new centrally sponsored scheme for computer literacy and studies in schools is being launched, and other initiatives planned for encouraging IT education from school to college levels. Last year, I announced the availability of 100% deduction from income tax of payments made to institutions for vocational education and training by the private sector set up in rural areas and small towns. I propose to make the same deduction available for payments to engineering institutions also. Mr. Speaker, sir, I have personally experienced poverty and faced problems in pursuing higher studies. I therefore feel that no deserving student in the country should be deprived of higher and technical education for want of finances. I am glad that the Indian Banks Association has formulated a new comprehensive educational loan scheme which will cover all courses in schools and colleges in India and abroad. Loans will be available under this scheme up to rupees 7.5 lakh for studies in India and rupees 15 lakh for studies abroad. No collateral or margin will be stipulated for loans up to rupees 4 lakh, the interest of which will not exceed the prime lending rate. The interest rate will not exceed PLR plus 1% for loans above rupees 4 lakhs. The loans would be repaid over a period of 5 to 7 years with provision of a grace period. I hope that this scheme will enable needy children to pursue higher and technical studies both inside and outside India. In keeping with government's commitment to improve the welfare of the scheme, scheduled tribes, a separate National Scheduled Tribes Finance and Department Corporation with an authorized share capital of rupees 500 crore has been set up. The allocation for the schemes for welfare of scheduled tribes in the Ministry of Tribal Affairs has been enhanced from rupees 786 crore this year to rupees 986 crore in the coming year. Similarly, the allocation for the schemes for welfare and upliftment of scheduled castes in the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment has been enhanced from rupees 709 crore this year to rupees 790 crore in the coming year. Honorable members may recall my announcement in the last budget of a new group insurance scheme, the Jansri Bima Yojana, to extend social security cover to the poorest sections of society. This tragedy has left an indelible impact on human history. I shall restrain myself from terming this tragedy as a calamity. This tragedy has changed the equation of the life of thousands and lakhs of families in Gujarat. More than 20,000 lives were lost in this tragedy and more than 20,000 cattle perished. About 50,000 people dwelling in slum clusters were buried under the debris. This quake razed to ground 182 tehsils of Gujarat and totally devastated 280 villages. In my constituency, 2,000 families and 172 buildings fell prey to nature's fury in just 40 seconds. We all have to be perspective to the intense impact this tragedy has left on humanity. This is not an opportune time for pinpointing lapses and loopholes. This is the time of healing the wounds of the victims of this tragedy. It may be possible to forecast floods and cyclones, but it is impossible to foretell as to when and where an earthquake is going to occur. Forecast of earthquake is not possible in any country of the world. Thousands of lives were lost right from Kutch to Balsar as a result of this quake, our country's youth being no exception to it. The 4 townships of Rapar, Anjar and Bhuj were totally devastated. The communication system and electricity supply came to a standstill and roads developed cracks. The bridge at Surajbari was also broken, and yet the government did not shirk away from taking control of the situation. There are 4 aspects of disaster management. First comes rescue operation, then come relief, then temporary rehabilitation, and finally permanent rehabilitation. Even for providing rescue and relief, we need to have road links, electricity, water and communication system. Following a tragedy of such magnitude, we have a duty to discharge, and we must desist from politicizing such an issue. We see that people rush to Kutch and Bhuj, rising above all their ideological differences. Voluntary organizations and NGOs from abroad and the country came forward to extend help and assistance. Workers from RSS as well as Muslim organizations came forward. This is not a question of replacing a chief minister, but in such circumstances, we must stand united and must discharge our duties and responsibilities. It is not a political party or a government which suffers and loses its credibility, and if credibility is at stake, then it would undermine the very foundation of the democracy. We have an expert from an interview by the chairman of an American Rescue Team International. He says in a situation like this in USA or in other Western countries, the situation would have been somewhat different. The damages amount to rupees 21,000 crore in Gujarat due to earthquake, in which 4 lakh houses, 300 villages and 4 cities were damaged. We have to reconstruct them. This is a big challenge before the country. In such a tragedy, we have to think as what we have to do instead of doing into the figures. The government have tried its level best to extend all sorts of assistance. The Building Material and Technical Promotion Council under the Ministry of Urban Development had conducted a survey in view of the apprehensions of the natural calamities. It has brought out its report, and a copy of that report should be provided to each district. Disaster Management Committee should be constituted at Tehsil, district and state level. We also require the sets of instruments and machinery for rescue operations. Such sets should be made available at district level. 1005 वर्ड है और 100 की स्पीड है। फ्लक्चुएशंस 5 से 7 वर्ड अप एंड डाउन दोनों तरफ है। और ये आपको इंग्लिश डिक्टेशन टेस्ट नंबर 9 के नाम से मिल जाएगा, आज की डेट में अपलोडेड है। आप जब टाइप करें थोड़ा ध्यान से देख के करें कि किस सॉफ्टवेयर में कंटेंट में टाइप कर रहे हो आप। आज की डेट में इंग्लिश डिक्टेशन टेस्ट नंबर 9 @100 की स्पीड पे मिल जाएगा आपको। ये 80 पे लिखेंगे कंटेंट। स्टार्ट इट। Honorable Speaker, sir, top 50 tourist destination sites in the country will be developed in partnership with states through a challenge mode. Land for building key infrastructure will have to be provided by states. Hostels in those destinations will be included in the infrastructure HML. The following measures will be taken for facilitating employment-led growth. 1. Organizing intensive skill development programs for our youth, including in institutes of hospitality management. 2. Providing mudra loans for homestays. 3. Providing ease of travel and connectivity to tourist destinations. 4. Providing performance-linked incentives to states for effective destination management, including tourist amenities, cleanliness, and marketing efforts. And 5. Introducing streamlined e-visa facilities along with visa-free fee waivers for certain tourist groups. Continuing with the emphasis on places of spiritual and religious significance, in the July budget, there will be a special focus on destinations related to the life and times of Lord Buddha. To implement private sector driven research, development and innovation initiative announced in the July budget, I am now allocating rupees 20,000 crores. In the next 5 years, under the PM Research Fellowship scheme, we will provide 10,000 fellowships for technological research in IITs and IIScs with enhanced financial support. The second Gen Bank with 10 lakh genetic lines will be set up for future food and nutritional security. This will provide conservation support to both public and private sectors for genetic resources. We will start a national geospatial mission to develop fundamental geospatial infrastructure and data. Using PM Gati Shakti, this mission will facilitate modernization of land records, urban planning and design of infrastructure projects. A Gyan Bharatam mission for survey, documentation and conservation of our manuscript heritage with academic institutions, museums, libraries and private collectors will be undertaken to cover more than 1 crore manuscripts. We will set up a national digital repository of Indian knowledge systems for knowledge sharing. We will set up an export promotion mission with sectoral and ministerial targets driven jointly by the ministries of commerce, MSME, and finance. It will facilitate easy access to export, credit, cross-border factoring support, and support to MSMEs to tackle non-tariff measures in overseas markets. A digital public infrastructure, Bharat Trade Net for international trade, will be set up as a unified platform for trade documentation and financing solutions. Support will be provided to develop domestic manufacturing capacities for our economies, integration with global supply chains. Sectors will be identified based on objective criteria. Facilitation groups with participation of senior officers and industry representatives will be formed for select products and supply chains. Through this, there are huge opportunities related to Industry 4.0, which needs high skills and talent. Our youth have both. Our government will support the domestic electronic equipment industry to leverage this opportunity for the benefit of the youth. A national framework will be formulated as guidance to states for promoting global capability centers in emerging Tier 2 cities. This will suggest measures for enhancing availability of talent and infrastructure, building by law reforms and mechanisms for collaboration with industry. Our government will facilitate upgradation of infrastructure and warehousing for air cargo, including high-value perishable horticulture produce. Cargo screening and customs protocols will be streamlined and made user-friendly. Over the past 10 years, our government has implemented several reforms for convenience of taxpayers, such as faceless assessment, taxpayers charter, faster returns, almost 99% returns being on self-assessment, and Vivad Se Vishwas scheme. Continuing these efforts, I reaffirm the commitment of the tax department to trust first, scrutinize later. I also propose to introduce the new income tax bill next week. The FDI limit for the insurance sector will be raised from 74 to 100%. This enhanced limit will be available for those companies which invest the entire premium in India. The current graduals and conditionalities associated with foreign investment will be reviewed and simplified. Public sector banks will develop Grameen Credit Score framework to serve the credit needs of SHG members and people in rural areas. Requirements and procedures for speedy approval of company mergers will be rationalized. The scope for fast-track merger will also be widened and the process made simpler. In the last 10 years, in several aspects, including financial and non-financial, our government has demonstrated a steadfast commitment to ease of doing business. We are determined to ensure that our regulations must keep up with technological innovations and global policy developments. A light touch regulatory framework based on principles and trust will unleash productivity and employment. Through this framework, we will update regulations that were made under old laws to develop this modern, flexible, people-friendly, and trust-based regulatory framework appropriate for the 21st century. I propose for specific measures. A high-level committee for regulatory reforms will be set up for a review of all non-financial sector regulations, certifications, licenses, and permissions in the फाइनेंशियल सेक्टर। ये 803 वर्ड है, 80 की स्पीड के साथ बोला गया है। ये आपको इंग्लिश डिक्टेशन टेस्ट नंबर 9 के नाम से मिल जाएगा। सीन कंटेंट लिखेंगे एक, जिसको टाइप करना टाइप कर सकते हो। जो सीन कंटेंट होगा वो विद कोमा नो कोमा दोनों फाइल में होगा। Ready? Start it. Mr. Speaker, sir, I am very grateful to all the honorable members on all sides of this august house who have taken part in the debate on the finance bill. The finance bill forms part of the overall budget, even though it deals only with the tax elements of the budget. It was therefore quite natural that several honorable members brought up general issues of policies, and the issues that they brought up are issues of profound importance to the future of our country. For example, reference was made to the primacy of agriculture. Sri Chandrakar brought out the massive problem of land, water degradation in our country, which, if not tackled, will hurt the living standard of millions and millions of farmers living in our country on the days of subsistence. Sri George Fernandez brought out the issue of regional imbalances, and these regional imbalances should be a source of concern to all segments of this house. Reference was made to the growing problem of unemployment. This again is an issue which ought to be the concern of all segments of this house. So, all these problems have been mentioned. The same way Sri George Fernandez specifically referred to the inadequacy of the infrastructure of power in Bihar, how it is contributing to the continued backwardness of potentially very rich state of the Union. All these are very live issues, and these must be tackled if this country is to achieve its full development potential, if the aspirations of the people of this country for a better tomorrow are to become a living reality. But how is it to come about? I submit to this august House that these aspirations cannot be given a living reality if the fiscal mess in which we have got into is not set right. India today has unsustainable fiscal deficit, and this is a point on which all shades of public opinion, all shades of economists are agreed. You can go on quarreling as to how this fiscal deficit came about, how it gave rise to unsustainable foreign exchange deficit. But the real issue before us today is what steps are we going to take that this crisis is contained and that this crisis is in fact used as an opportunity to set in motion those forces of reforms which alone can see that this country's great development potential is made a reality. I submit to you that by presenting the budget in this House 6 or 8 weeks ago, I do not claim that I have performed wonders. But if you look at the situation that this government inherited, it was a situation of almost certain default on international obligations. If we had not acted the way we acted, you have my assurance, India would have by now been declared a defaulter. What are the consequences of default? To know the consequences of default, we have to look around. What has happened in Latin America? What has happened in Africa? Once the country defaults on its international obligations, nobody would touch it. They have to import on a cash and carry basis. Nobody gives credit. Even after that, I think sooner or later these countries end up with a hat in hand before their international creditors in the IMF or Paris Club or London Club. We have prevented that situation. It has been the sincere effort of our government that somehow we must keep the honor of this country intact and also our unblemished record of holding of our commitments intact. I think that unblemished record must be maintained. I do not submit to you that we have succeeded in doing that. But I am not promising you that if this country goes on spending the way it has been spending, and if everybody says that subsidies should be increased, and if everybody says that the tax rates must be reduced, and if the productivity of investment in this country remains as low as it is today, I do not promise you that there is divine law which would ensure that India would not face default if we continue to do all these things. Therefore, all that I can say is that I have bought some time. This is the time we must use for retrospection to set in motion those reform processes which would convert this crisis into opportunity. If we do not do that, I can assure you, you will face unemployment and inflation of the type you have never seen before in this country. I regret that I had to do what I had to do in cutting the fertilizer subsidies. I wish it had been done over a period of time and gradually. Yesterday, as an honorable member quoted a report of a very famous agriculture secretary and a gentleman from Karnataka, and for whom I have great respect, who had in that report clearly recommended that the fertilizer prices have to be raised, and they ought to be raised gradually over a period of time. ये 80 की स्पीड है और ये आपको दोनों फाइल मिल जाएगी विद कोमा नो कोमा। केसी सोर्स है 309 नंबर है, आप टाइप करेंगे।